Hi everyone, and welcome to Exploring the Build. If you've just found this place, then welcome. And if you're returning, I am glad to have you back. I'm Alex, and this is my channel where we explore and theorycraft different character builds for Dungeons & Dragons. Today we have a requested build from Open World Addict, who asked for a build called the Dreamwalker, which was meant to be a Kalashtar based build. So building around the Kalashtar species from Eberron rising from the last war. And the idea of the build was to utilize the lore in the setting as well as the Kalashtar's innate species abilities in order to flesh out their entire kit as a character build. Now, before I talk about the lore of the Kalashtar specifically and what we're trying to do to flesh out this character, I gotta address the elephant in the room. And that is that this video is not called the Dreamwalker, but rather the Soulweaver. Why the difference? And also, what on earth is a Soulweaver? To start unpacking that, let's answer the question, what is a Soulweaver? A while back, I did a build that drew inspiration from the online flash game Dragonfable with the Doom Knight character build. Today, we are taking a little bit of inspiration from there again. The Soulweaver is another class from the game Dragonfable that also appears in some of the other Artix Entertainment games, and it is a very unique class. It is one of my favorites as well, and I've always wanted to try and replicate it in D&D. The reason I'm using this today as part of this Dreamwalker request is because the lore between the two concepts is so close that it's really hard not to want to mesh them together and try to create this fully unique, fleshed out build. Some of you who are familiar with the game Dragonfable may already know what I'm talking about, but for those that aren't, let's go dive into the lore of both concepts so I can show you exactly what I mean when I say that these two concepts work so well together for creating a unique character build. To start with the lore of the Kalashtar from Eberron rising from the last war, the Kalashtar are a compound people. They are a group of humans that have been bonded with benevolent renegade spirits called Kuari. These benevolent Kuari spirits left their dream plane home of Dalkur to escape more malicious or evil Kuari spirits that dominated it. The benevolent Kuari that have since bonded with the humans and created the Kalashtar species essentially hope to utilize the Kalashtar as agents for good in order to try and shift the fundamental nature of their home, Dalkur, and basically turn it good. In the meantime, though, each Kalashtar is bonded with one of these benevolent Kuari spirits of light, and as a result, they have psionic powers, various strengthened mental abilities, and they don't actually dream. Instead, when they sleep, the Kuari spirit takes over, and the Kalashtar gets to view this spirit realm. The two are unable to directly communicate to one another, and instead, they experience the relationship through instincts, emotions, and inspiration after having seen the memories of the Kuari spirit in their dreams. On the flip side, Soulweavers are people who have become versed in the art of weaving with elemental spirits, forging a bond with one of these spirits that then becomes known as their soul ally. This bond then allows the Soulweaver to attain various supernatural powers that essentially makes them their own unique class. They have the ability to manifest soul claws, weapons of your spirit or psionic energy that they can then use to fight with, or they can do a number of other powers. They can purify other beings' souls. They can bind/trap their souls, mechanically, essentially stunning an enemy for a few turns in the game. They have high mobility, as they can be seen teleporting quite often in combat, and they can dish out a lot of damage, not just through these soul claws, but through a plethora of other abilities. Now, about this soul ally, the elemental spirits in the game Dragonfable are very much spirits that embody certain concepts. The soul ally you get as the main player character is the spirit of protection known as Aegis, though the main enemies of the Soulweaver quest lines are corrupt elemental spirits. One is the elemental spirit of greed, and another the elemental spirit of envy. That's of course not an exhaustive list of all the spirits that exist in the Dragonfable lore, but I think you can get the picture of what other spirits would exist, ones that embody various concepts, whether benevolent or corrupted and malicious. But from the quick overview of these two disparate pieces of lore, I think you can see why I want to combine them together. Both of them involve creating a bond with a spiritual ally that we then use to manifest our powers and abilities. So, with all that said and that lore in mind, let's jump into the build. Starting off the build in character creation with our origin, we know that we want to be a Kalashtar, so let's just quickly go over what a Kalashtar actually gets. As a Kalashtar, there are 4 main features we will pick up. Number 1, dual mind. We have advantage on wisdom saving throws, flat out. We also have mental discipline. Mental discipline just gives us flat out resistance to psychic damage. We also have the Mind Link ability, and Mind Link is limited range telepathy. We can form a telepathic bond and communicate telepathically with any other creature that is within a number of feet equal to 10 times our character level. And then finally, we have Severed from Dreams. We, as a Kalashtar, do not dream. Instead, when we do dream, the Kawari takes over and we become a viewer of the Kawari spirit's past memories. Because of this, we are flat out immune to any spells that would require us to dream, such as the dream spell. But we aren't immune to spells that can put us to sleep, like the sleep spell or others. Now, going on to our background, we're probably going to use a custom background using the DMG rules. And in my mind, we're a Kalashtar who has dedicated to training with their abilities, and perhaps joined an order of Soulweavers in order to learn how to manifest these powers in a very specific way, which thus becomes our class. And while not every Kalashtar is a Soulweaver, perhaps the art of soul weaving was created and is heavily dominated by Kalashtar. However you go about it, we also mechanically do want a custom background or a background from a previous source book in order to pick up the ability score boosts that we would like, as well as the origin feat that we would like. For ability score boosts, we're going to improve our dexterity by +2 and our charisma by +1. And for our origin feat, we want Magic Initiate Wizard. With Magic Initiate Wizard, we will use charisma as our spellcasting ability, but we're not too worried about that per se, because we're going to be picking spells that don't rely on a spellcasting ability to be useful. We're going to pick up Mage Armor as our actual spell, and then we're going to take Blade Ward as well as Message for our cantrips. And of course, we are reflavoring each of these to be a little bit more psionic or spiritual in nature to reflect our character. Finally, for our actual ability scores, we're going to want the following array: 8 Strength, 17 Dexterity, 14 Constitution, 8 Intelligence, 10 Wisdom, and 16 Charisma. As far as our mental stats go for a psionic character, we are a little low, but we're going to do our best to make it work. Jumping into the actual level breakdown now of our Soulweaver character. Because it is a 2024 build, we are going to go tier by tier, where tier 1 for us is levels 1 to 5, tier 2 is going to be levels 6 to 10, so on and so forth. Starting in tier 1 with levels 1 to 5, we are going to be a Rogue 3 and Warlock 2. Rogue for the first little bit is nice, but it doesn't give us anything super notable, but we really want to get to Rogue 3 as quick as possible in order to become a Soul Knife Rogue. Soul Knife Rogue gives us psionic dice for our psionic powers, such as Psi Bolstered Knack, as well as Psychic Whispers, and we also get Psi Knives. Psi Knives are really what I want for this character class, as that is the pretty much physical embodiment or best replication possible of the Soulweaver's Soul Claws. With our Psychic Blades, or Soul Claws as I will probably be calling them for the rest of the video, we can manifest them whenever we take the attack action and make an attack. It appears in our hand. It does have the Throne property if we wanted to have some range. It has the Finesse weapon property as well as the Vex weapon mastery. It counts as a simple melee weapon, and it does a d6 plus whatever ability modifier we used for the attack roll. Also, after we do attack with it, it will disappear automatically, so we don't need to worry about summoning it, desummoning it, resummoning it, or anything like that. But after we do attack with it with our action, as a bonus action, we can then manifest another Soul Claw in a separate free hand, using all of the same properties except that the damage die is a d4 instead of a d6. Looking at Psi Bolstered Knack as well as Psychic Whispers, Psi Bolstered Knack helps our skills that we are proficient in, so as long as we are proficient in a skill, if we fail a skill check with that skill, we can spend one of our psionic dice in order to roll that die, add the number rolled to the skill check, potentially turning it into a success. Psychic Whispers, on the other hand, is another telepathy ability. Now, we already have some telepathy just from flat out being a Kalashtar. The difference is that Psychic Whispers, number 1, costs a psionic energy die, whereas the Kalashtar telepathy doesn't. However, the Psychic Whispers ability also has greater range. We can create a telepathic bond with a number of creatures of our choice equal to our proficiency bonus. Then roll the psionic energy die and have that bond stay up for a number of hours equal to the number rolled on the die. But the range of this telepathic bond is actually a full mile, full stop. There's no scaling range or anything like that. It does allow us to have a little more long-range communication. But besides those things, that's all we really care about getting from Rogue for right now. Jumping over to level 4 and 5, we're going to go with Warlock. As a Warlock 1 and then 2, we're just going to gain 3 invocations as well as some spell casting. You can pick whatever spells you'd like, there's none that are really specific, same with cantrips, but the invocations, we do have some specific ones. The first invocation I would like to pick up is, maybe a little controversial, but I'll explain why we're doing it, Pact of the Blade. Pact of the Blade says, as a bonus action, we can conjure a packed weapon that we bond with. It can be any simple or martial melee weapon. We could also create a bond with a magic weapon by touching it, but we're not really worried about that. What we care about is the fact that the Psychic Blade is a simple melee weapon and it is not magical, meaning for all intents and purposes, we can summon one as our packed blade. The drawback is this Psychic Blade or Soul Claw will still disappear after we attack with it, given that that is part of the weapon itself. However, there's no reason we shouldn't be able to have it summoned. Now, of course, the real question is, why are we bothering with this in the first place? Creating a Psychic Blade or Soul Claw as a packed weapon doesn't really do much for us. The weapon already deals psychic damage, so we're not super worried about changing the Pact of the Blade damage type from a typical weapon's damage type to Radiant, Psychic, or Necrotic. Or at least we wouldn't be from a mechanical standpoint. Also, we don't care about using Charisma over Dexterity because we want our Dexterity to actually be fairly high with this build, so we aren't getting that benefit. Now, strictly rules as written, it seems like this can work, and the reason I would like it to work is for the flavor of being able to change our damage type. See, the Soulweaver's Soul Claws change their design based on the element that you are using with your actual weapon. So for example, if we picked a light weapon, our Soul Claw would become more divine or holy in its look, as if we picked a dark element weapon, it would become more shadowy and sinister. And that is what I want to do with our Soul Claw. This is all flavor. We could just say we're doing this regardless of the damage type we're doing, but I like having the ability to swap out our damage type from Psychic to Radiant or even Necrotic as a mechanical backup to that flavor. It makes it really feel like we're actively changing the look, design of our Psychic Blade or Soul Claw because we are actively changing the damage type. If for whatever reason you don't want to bother with Pact of the Blade or your DM says no, that's perfectly fair. In that case, we take other invocations that are going to be more beneficial to us, including the 2 that we pick up at level 5/Warlock 2. We're going to pick up Otherworldly Leap to be able to cast Jump on ourselves without expending a spell slot, granting us even more mobility. And we're also going to pick up either Armor of Shadows to be able to cast Mage Armor at will without expending a spell slot, meaning that we could swap out the Mage Armor we got from the Magic Initiate feat for a different first level wizard spell. Or we grab lessons of the first ones and pick up an extra origin feat such as Tough, Alert, or anything else that you would feel is appropriate. One other thing we could do is pick up Eldritch Mind as an invocation in order to have advantage on concentration checks, and then try to pick up some powerful concentration spells like Hex for extra damage, or anything else that could be a powerful buff, debuff, etc. that utilizes concentration. Going up to tier 2 now, levels 6 to 10, we're going to be a Rogue 7 and Warlock 3. we probably want to jump back to Rogue to pick up our first feat. And for that first feat, we are going to pick up something that rounds off our dexterity. At Rogue 5, we get Uncanny Dodge. And after that, we're going to go up to Warlock 3 at total level 8 in order to pick up our Warlock subclass. Now the Quarry Spirits, at least the evil ones that are actually statted out in Eberron Rising from the Last War, are considered fiends. But I would argue that any being that changes the way we dream or perceive reality, as well as one that has created a physical bond with us and is technically benevolent, sounds a bit more Fey in nature. And to that end, we're going to go Archfey. Going Archfey gives us the Steps of the Fey feature, which gives us the Misty Step spell, as well as a number of free castings equal to our Charisma modifier. This is our primary Soulweaver teleport ability that boosts our actual full mobility beyond just the jump spell or cunning action dash from being a rogue. We can flavor it as instantaneously walking through the dream plane or world that our Quarry Spirit is from, basically turning us into a dream walker and allowing us to maneuver around reality with ease. Thanks to Steps of the Fae, whenever we cast Misty Step, we also gain an extra bonus. We can either taunt enemies that were adjacent to the spot we left, giving them disadvantage on all attack rolls against creatures other than us until the start of our next turn, or we can do Refreshing Step, granting ourselves or another creature within 10 feet of us after we teleport 1d10 temporary hit points. Going up to Rogue 6 and 7, we gain another set of expertise, as well as evasion and reliable talent. Perhaps instead of just us dodging out of the way through the evasion feature, our soul ally actually comes and protects us. And for the skills with reliable talent and expertise, likewise, maybe our soul ally or bonded Quarry Spirit guides our actual ability rather than it being completely us. Going up through the rest of the build now from tier 3, levels 11 all the way up to 15, and then tier 4, levels 16 all the way up to 20, we're just going to be a rogue. We'll save one more level for Warlock 4, but that's probably not going to show up until level 19 or 20, so that way we can pick up the extra epic boon. But honestly, we don't need anything else from Warlock 2 desperately. We will be a Rogue 16, and as a Rogue 16, we're going to gain the Slippery Mind feature, which I really wanted to pick up on this build. It's just that it is a very high level feature. But on the way up, we're also going to pick up 4 more feats from Rogue 8, 10, 12, and 16, though 16 will probably be a second epic boon. And in addition to those 3 feats, we're also going to gain extra cunning strikes, which I didn't even mention when we picked them up at Rogue 5. And we're also going to grab almost all of our actual rogue subclass abilities. So, really quickly, let's go over those subclass abilities, then we'll go over the feats, and then I might talk about any other features that we get that are notable. As a level 9 rogue, we gain Soul Blades, which gives us 2 features. We have Homing Strikes, so if we miss an attack with our Psychic Blade, or Soul Claw in our case, we can roll a Psionic Energy die, potentially turning that miss into a hit. We also gain Psychic Teleportation. This is another bonus action teleport. We'll re-roll one of our Psychic dice, and then multiply that number by 10 feet in order to teleport that far to an unoccupied space we can see. 13th level Soul Knife, we gain Psychic Veil, which says that as a magic action, we can just become invisible. And also we can reuse this ability if we spend a Psionic Energy die to do so. There is an argument to be made for going Rogue 17 here. If we go Rogue 17, we would cap off the amount of dice that we get. The die size would increase to a D12 instead of a D10 that it would be one level prior, and we would gain Rend Mind, which is the rogue capstone as well. Rend Mind says that when we use our Psychic Blade to deal sneak attack damage to a creature, we can cause them to make a Wisdom saving throw, and on a failure, they gain the stunned condition. Doing that would mean that we don't actually pick up a second epic boon. I'll leave that up to you if you think it's worth going Rogue 17 and Warlock 3, or if you would rather have the 2 epic boons by going Rogue 16 and Warlock 4. Now the final thing to talk about are our feats. So we know we're going to grab at least 1 epic boon, if not 2, from Rogue 16 and potentially Warlock 4, but we also have Rogue 8, 10, and 12 to pick up 3 other feats. Well, for 2 of those levels, I want to grab the Fey Touched and Shadow Touched feats. Both of these can increase our Charisma, getting it to 18, allowing our spell casting to be a bit better, as well as giving us an extra free casting of Misty Step. On top of that though, we gain another extra free casting of Misty Step from having Fey Touched, and we can pick up one enchantment or divination spell of our choice. Shadow Touched, on the other hand, gives us a free casting of invisibility, so we have even more invisibility potential, but we also gain a free illusion or necromancy spell. And here, I would recommend taking Wrathful Smite. Wrathful Smite is now a necromancy spell, so it can get picked up from the Shadow Touched feat, and yeah, without any level investment into Paladin, we can now smite as a rogue. The thing is that it's not as much damage as a typical Divine Smite, but it does potentially cause the Frightened condition. While it does also use our bonus action, it is a really neat choice, given that we could throw it in with other Cunning Strikes that we get from being a rogue. For those rogue Cunning Strikes, we get a lot of interesting options, given that we will eventually pick up Devious Strikes as well, which gives us more options. We have Improved Cunning Strikes, which allows us to use 2 options on a single attack. And let's quickly look at what those options are. We could poison an enemy. We could trip an enemy. Both of those standing out as nice debuff options. We could withdraw if we wanted extra mobility. And eventually we could also daze, obscure, or knock out our target if we wanted to use those options from Devious Strikes at level 14, giving us even more debuff potential. Of course, we'll want to reflavor these to be psionic or soul-based in nature, but having the ability to attack an enemy, and if we hit, choose to deal 1, eventually maybe 2 of these debuff abilities, and then also spend our bonus action to dump in a Wrathful Smite, dealing a little bit of extra damage, while also potentially frightening the enemy on top of every other debuff that we're throwing at them, that is pretty neat. And after all that's said and done, we are left with one final general feat to actually pick up. And for that, I would probably just choose an ability score improvement and either increase our dexterity or our constitution by +2. The absolute last feat, or potentially 2 feats we have, are epic boons. And for these, honestly, there's a lot of very powerful ones and a lot of good ones that could work with our Soulweaver or just like a rogue in general. So I'll let you choose whatever you would like. Though if I did have to pick 2 to recommend, I would definitely recommend Boon of Dimensional Travel for the extra teleport ability and flavor, or Boon of the Night Spirit for even more invisibility, as well as the Shadowy Form feature that says that as long as we're in dim light or darkness, we have resistance to all damage except Psychic and Radiant. But we already have resistance to Psychic because we are, in fact, a Kalashtar. And beyond that, that's the entire build, finally. Overall, we are definitely a Soulweaver, since the Soul Knife Rogue kind of almost perfectly captures what the Soulweaver is. I have always envisioned these Psychic Blades as being the Soulweaver Soul Claws, though yes, they are just technically knives that you manifest in your hand and can throw. I've always preferred to think of them as the actual gauntleted claw. The abilities that the Soul Knife Rogue and rogues in general get, along with their mobility from cunning action, and the slipperiness of evasion and reliable talent, and even slippery mind itself, also all really reflect what the Soulweaver is meant to be in Dragonfable as well. Overall, I think the hardest choice of this build is deciding whether or not to go level 17 to get Rend Mind and max out our Soul Knife potential, or to pick up that extra epic boon. That is a late game issue that you would only have to worry about if you did carry this character all the way up to level 20. And other than that, that's it. Let me know what you might add or change to build around a Kalashtar based character. The Soulweaver is not the only piece of inspiration out there, but it was one that I found the most engaging and interesting to work with. And also, I do think the Kalashtar lore fits pretty perfectly with the Soulweaver's lore. But let me know if you have some other ideas as well. As always, thanks so much for coming on the journey with me, and I hope to see you in the next one.